The following episode of Crusade for Myth Drannor was adapted from Lost Tales of Myth Drannor, the Darkwood Webs. With word of their heroics in Barrowmist trickling across the Mistledale through taverns and gossips, our four heroes, Jynx the halfling rogue, Massul of Clan Bloodfury, a dwarven berserker, Rilyanasse the moon elven ranger and oracle, and Túrendil the moon elven warpriest of Corel and Larethian, have earned a little bit of a reputation for themselves, and it is less than a 10-day before Holdfast Harpenshield asks Rilyanasse to gather her companions for an easy job. Once gathered, Harpenshield gets straight to the point. Are you familiar with Bronzestar Wheelwright? Well, Elmo Bronzestar has a bit of a business proposal for you. He's got a standing contract to deliver some supplies up to Hillsfar. I'm sure you're familiar with the actions Lord Malthair has taken against some of the former citizens of the city. The innkeeper not so discreetly indicates Hillsfar's great law of humanity, an edict barring non-humans from the city itself. Given your standing as minor heroes and the disposition of your various heritages, Elmo thought it might be a subtle way to send a message to hire you on as guards of the Wheelwright's precious cargo. With no objections from the four, he continues. The pay is modest, Elmo has offered to supply your provisions for the trip, and the work should be easy enough. Secure the cargo and be sure to make yourself seen at and outside of Hillsfar. Try not to stir up too much trouble. Not having any immediate plans, the four agree and make ready for the trip, purchasing a few scrolls and potions before setting out. The trip, as promised, ends up being uneventful. The Red Plumes bar entry into Hillsfar to the four non-humans, allowing the wagons laden with goods to pass in after a brief inspection. After a few choice words are exchanged, the return trek to Ashabanford begins. After the second night of camping along the Moonsea Ride for the trek back home, something disturbs the final watch just as the warm rays of the sun are cutting through the pre-dawn mists and Rilyanasse is packing away her supplies, while Massul and Jynx sleep in. A faint buzzing from deeper into the forest catches her attention. Her mind races as she attempts to determine what manner of creature causes just such a droning noise. Cautiously, she grips her longbow, turning to watch the trees while drawing attention to the situation for her already awake elven companion. Three diminutive humanoids, insect-like wings upon their backs beating, rapidly emerge from the brush. A pair of female sprites and a lone younger-looking male. They look weary, with dirty, disheveled clothes and dark circles under their eyes belying a night of hardship. The three introduce themselves. Zindita, the slighter female being their leader, Finita, her more muscular sister, and Kaldor, the lone male. They waste no time in pleading for assistance from the four travelers. They explain their plight as best they can, presenting what they know. Their homes, made in the upper branches of a Dryad's oak tree, has been besieged by spiders and their shepherds, frightening man-spiders. The Dryad Kaltensendra, as well as some young wood elves, attempted to drive off the invaders, but were weakened by a spider that seemed to be made entirely of shadow and either captured or slain. When the three left to find help, the spiders were wrapping the defeated elves, the Dryad's tree, and the entire glade in webbing. The four briefly debate the possibility of this being a fey trick, while the sprites have a quick spat about the trustworthiness of the travelers they've come across, Zindita's sister protesting the loudest. The party decides it's likely the work of drow, given their proximity to Myth Drannor and the recent uptick of dark elf activity in the forest over the last years, and they may be the only ones capable of helping these diminutive fae in time to save their home and allies. With the information available to them, they prepare their spells and gear for the trek to the Dryad's Grove and eventual battle against the Arachnids. The sprites lead them as straight as they can through the Darkwood, though the going is harder, for while the fae can fly, the party has to trek through the underbrush, briars, and mud. Even though it is spring, the thick foliage of the shadow tops, oaks, and maples of the Darkwood choke out the sunlight, leaving the entire forest a dim, damp place with little more than a breeze on the windiest of days. Zindita directs her kin to spread out among the group, offering what help they can along with little tidbits of conversation. It's not long before the difference in their means of locomotion becomes an issue, as the game trail through a dense patch of briars is blocked by a recent deadfall covered in razor vine. The sprites traverse it easily, flying over the obstacle, as does most of the group. Massul ends up with a few cuts, with Jynx taking the worst of it. The dwarf and halfling are considering how to best rig up a pulley through the trees to aid the hin in getting over the deadfall, before Rilyanasse interrupts their discussion. vaulting the Deadfall to grab Jynx and physically haul them across. Their little rogue ends up mostly unscathed, with Rill taking the brunt of the pain from the long, sharp thorns. Wasting no time, the party sets out once more. There's still much distance to cover, and as the hours hiking through the Darkwood pass, a number of oddities tempt them to delay their journey. A doe and 2 fawns drinking at a pond off the trail, surrounded by a small pack of wolves. The sprites consider intervention, concerned that the carrion might attract scavengers. However, the elves convince them to simply let nature run its course. The doe and one of her fawns escape, the other becoming dinner for the wolves. The trail winds near several dilapidated stone buildings, old even by elven standards. Luckily, one is close to the trail enough for the 4 to inspect. A sizable maple is growing through its back wall, the two having merged in a way. The building's purpose isn't apparent from a peek in the doorway, the floor having become a fungal garden and the only object of interest an intact stone bench in the back of the room near the tree wall. The sprites urge the party not to tarry here, insistent that they must make haste to reach their home before nightfall. On request, Rilyanasse identifies some of the fungi as dark truffles, a dangerous variety of man-eating fungus. Expending resources to fight them here would make the inevitable combat with the sprites invaders all the more difficult. Disappointed, but not eager to become a fungal feast, the remaining party members trek onward, leaving the ruined village to keep what secrets and perils it had to itself. As they near their destination, the forest becomes darker, gloomier. The cheerful chirp of birds and rustle of startled forest creatures gives way to an eerie silence and the occasional scuttling of oversized vermin fleeing at their approach. Webs begin to thicken, joining the overhead foliage and blocking the light and the underbrush and impeding progress. The sprites themselves are quieter as well, urging the 4 on with a renewed urgency. A crashing in the forest nearby breaks the mood, as several wild boars come stampeding towards the party. They scramble out of the path of the frightened animals, only to see what was pursuing them. Several humanoid-looking plant creatures. Rilyanasse identifies them as needle blights, and behind them a vine blight writhes, choking the life out of an older, larger boar. She rounds the corner of the trail to see it blocked by several smaller plant creatures, twig blights, a poisonous cousin of the needle blight. The group draw their weapons as combat breaks out. The twig blights advance on the ranger and her owl, launching a flurry of attacks but only barely scratching Elimpilan, their toxins ineffective against the bird. The owl strikes back, badly hurting one of the little creatures. In the rear of the party, as they've been split by the boar stampede, the vine blights advance, taking ineffective swipes at Túrendil. Meanwhile, the needle blights crash through the undergrowth towards the rogue and warpriest. Their attacks fail to find purchase as a series of blows land on the hero's armor instead. The ancient boar stops struggling as it succumbs to the vine blight, which now slowly creeps towards the fight, the undergrowth around it becoming alive with magic and malice. Massul lashes out at one of the needle blights, while Rilyanasse and Elimpilan engage with the twig blights, felling one of the little monsters. Jynx fails to damage the needle blight, suffering a pummeling from its claws in retaliation. Animated by the power of the vine creature, plants and branches entangle Jynx, Túrendil, and the 2 needle blights. One of the entangled creatures falls to Massul's steel, while Elimpilan and Rill finish off the twig blights. As the combat continues and the vine blight advances, the Fae allies desperately attempt to help. The sprite Kaldor summons the magic of the forest and quells the writhing vines around the advancing monster, allowing the berserker and warpriest a chance to engage with it. Túrendil advances toe-to-toe with the monster and lashes out, cutting some of the vines away. Jynx stabs at the remaining needle blight, and Massul swings his hammer wildly, managing to strain himself in the process. The needle blight, too, fumbles, blindly attacking the plant creature next to it instead of its halfling prey. Almost instinctively, the vine blight calls the forest around it to again animate, wrapping the heroes in grasping limbs, vine, and undergrowth. Túrendil strikes at the creature, as does Massul, with both damaging it. A carefully aimed shot from Rilyanasse ends the vine menace once and for all, while Jynx cleans up the final needle blight. The party regroups, healing their wounds and ensuring no one would be hindered too greatly by the toxins from the monsters they'd encountered. Zendita urges them forward, encouraging the group that the grove isn't far now. Emerging into the clearing, the four can see Kaltensendra's grove is a sad place, dominated by a massive oak tree covered in webbing. Wildflowers are trampled, budding trees are bound in web and gloom, while spiders work under the supervision of an aberrant man-spider, further encasing the western flank of the glade in sticky web. Cocoons hang suspended from the tree, while a lone body wrapped in silk leans against a rock, a shadowy arachnid guarding it. Upon seeing the shadow, Túrendil withdraws a scroll and from it casts a warding against evil. Zendita cries out, noticing a swarm of spiders ascending the tree. The sprites fly up to engage the arachnids, leaving the party to deal with the larger spiders below. Upon seeing the adventurers approach, the man-spider jitters commands at the other arachnids, and the giant spiders begin scuttling towards the party. Jynx twirls their sling, propelling a bullet towards one of the vermin as Túrendil draws Nephilium and calls upon Corellan's blessing as he and Rilyanasse stride forward towards their foes. Several spiders scuttle forth to meet the elves. Massul hustles forward, bringing his hammer down in a wide arc, crushing one of the spiders beneath its head. The aberrant creature in seeming command of the arachnids rushes forward in the company of more spiders, and the party truly gets to grips with their foes. Túrendil stands just out of reach of the larger creatures, calling Corellan's blessing upon his blade. The sword begins to glow with a bright green aura as he bellows a challenge to the Ettercap in archaic elven. Rilyanasse draws careful aim with her bow, sending an arrow lancing through one of the man-spider's arms. The smaller arachnids swarm Massul. The dwarf manages to smash one as it tries to dart inside his guard, and then steps away from the others as they scrabble uselessly against his greaves. The Ettercap flings a web at Túrendil, entangling the elf as one of the larger spiders scuttles out to try and bite him, but Corellan's blessings turn the vermin's fangs. Calling for the favor of Corellan again, the elf plunges his blade into the creature as Rill buries another arrow in its master. They note with concern that the spider shadow sank into the ground. Massul brings his hammer down on the giant spider menacing Túrendil, but the Ettercap takes advantage of the elven priest's entanglement and steps forward, biting down on him and pumping venom into the elf's veins. Jynx and Túrendil both strike at the Ettercap without effect. The shadow spider pops out of the ground next to Túrendil, and though its bite does no physical damage, he feels his strength sapping away as it chills him. Seeing this, Rill draws forth a special arrow she'd reserved for such an emergency. Coolly drawing her bow, she shoots the smaller spider in front of the shadow, and fire bursts forth from the wound in a wave, engulfing the shadow and the Ettercap in flame. Túrendil calls on the power of Corellan one last time, empowering Nephilium as much as he is able before striking at the shadow, which if anything seems surprised that the sword could hurt it, as Rill continued to steadily fire arrows and the Ettercap continued to scrabble at the warpriest. Springing into action, Jynx tumbles behind the Ettercap and jams her dagger into its kidney as it avoids Massul's blow. Struggling mightily against the webs entangling him, Túrendil rams Nephilium's point into the shadow's form. The holy light wreathing the blade seems to consume it from the inside out, until it fades to nothingness. Taking the opportunity, Rilyanasse fires one last arrow as the Ettercap turns to the fading form of its prized minion in surprise, putting the arrow square into its throat. The monster falls dead. Massul and Rilyanasse help Túrendil break free of the webs entangling him. Muttering thanks, his armor feeling heavier than he ever remembered it, the elf stumbles over to a nearby rock, slumping down against it. Waving away Jynx's offered potion, he heals himself with Corellan's blessing. Concerned the shadowy spider may have slain whatever was restrained where it had been lurking, Túrendil, Jynx, and Massul approach, intent on investigating the cocoon near the rock. As he approaches, the dwarf feels something sticky catch his leg, and almost instantly he's hanging suspended from a web in the tree. a spider's snare having caught his leg. Having no patience for this, he wrestles his sword free and cuts at the line, falling flat on his back as it snaps loose. Much to their relief, the prisoner in the webbing is still alive, a beautiful woman with green skin and a tangle of brown hair messy with leaves. At first she looks relieved and surprised that she still lives, though she quickly regains her composure. She responds to questions of her identity and what happened in a sweet, confident voice, light as the rustle of wind through the shadow tops. I am Kaltensendra. This is my grove, this is my tree. These spiders came from the direction of the city of Song. Taking stock of the situation, the Dryad continues. We must free the others if they still live, and see to it they are also healed. The party begins searching the grove, with Jynx finding the other cocooned humanoids and preparing to cut them away. Through a twist of ill fortune and malign intent, another trap finds its mark as a deadfall of heavy limbs collapses on the halfling, rendering the rogue unconscious but still alive. The party rushes to their aid, and after freeing their ally, does the same for the trapped elves. The elves, friends of Kaltensendra, introduce themselves as natives of Cimberholm, members of the Tiri Kitor clan. The leader among those present is one Kiliar Arrowswift. Kiliar is a wood elf with light brown hair and a serious expression and tone. He exudes the airs of a hunter and warrior who has long since left society for a life in the wilderness. Arrowswift explains that they had come to the aid of the sprites and the Dryad after tracking the lair of these monsters back to the lands near Myth Drannor. They fought the Ettercap and some of its 8-legged minions, and while the battle was hard fought, eventually succumbed, with the trio of sprites fleeing into the Darkwood in a desperate bid to find aid. Introductions out of the way, Kaltensendra and the Tiri Kitor elves are surprised to learn that the adventurers had rushed to their aid without promise of payment or recompense, and insist they sit together to share a simple meal of travel rations and good berries provided by the Dryad. Impressed with their selflessness, the Wood Elves gift them a handful of valuable gems and the Dryad a travel cloak, a magical cloak enchanted to provide food and shelter for its wearer. Protesting that they won't be takers without offering something in return, the sprites provide each of the party with 2 doses of their magical sleep potion, as well as the promise of the friendship of the good fae of the Darkwood. In the spirit of giving, Jynx shares their tobacco with the elves, gifting one of the Tiri Kitor warriors their scarf as well. The halfling mostly keeps to themselves for the conversations, however, not having picked up the elven tongue in their youth. The group of elves, fae, and adventurers exchange pleasantries for some time, and come to the agreement that the Tiri Kitor will contact Túrendil and Ashavenford once they determine where these spiders originated from. Kaltensendra suggests that in the meantime, the 4 of them make their way northeast to Buttergroves and visit her cousin, another Dryad, and take advantage of the spring butternut harvest. This concludes Lost Tales of Myth Drannor, the Darkwood Webs, as we continue our crusade for Myth Drannor. The campaign is far from over, and we hope you will continue to join us as we continue our adventures. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you for the next adventure.